My name is Lisa Morgan. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the reliable older sister to Rebecca. We grew up side by side, sharing rooms, stories, and the kind of bond one thought nothing could shake. So when she got engaged, I was thrilled. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I didn't hesitate. I poured myself into the role, with time, money, and love. I wanted it to be perfect for her. What I didn't expect was how easily I'd be pushed aside. Or how quickly everything we'd built would begin to unravel, all under my mother's direction. And if you've ever felt sidelined by your own family, or made to feel invisible in a moment that should have brought you closer, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. You're not alone in growing up. I was more than just a sister. I was Rebecca's protector, her guide. I taught her how to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and stood by her through every teenage heartbreak. I was the constant in her life, always showing up, no matter what. But our mother, Deborah, didn't treat us the same. Rebecca was. Her pride, vibrant, artistic, full of charm. I was the practical one, told to smile more, to loosen up. Our dad, Thomas, rarely got involved. He stayed quiet, avoiding conflict whenever my mom's bias surfaced. As the eldest, I learned to manage things early. If the house needed fixing, I called the contractor. When money was tight, I covered the bills. I even helped fund Rebecca's college degree when my parents came up short. I never complained. Helping her succeed felt meaningful to me. While I was building my career as a financial consultant in Boston, managing portfolios worth millions, I was still managing my own family's needs in the background. It was ironic, sure, but it felt natural. Especially when it came to Rebecca. Her happiness was always a priority. When she met James Wilson at an art gallery 3 years ago, I could see right away that he was different. Kind, grounded, and supportive of her dreams. He came from money, but he didn't flaunt it. They were a great match. So when she called me, giddy and breathless, saying he proposed, "You're going to be my maid of honor, right?" I didn't even think twice. Those early weeks of planning were some of the best we'd had in years. We toured venues, built Pinterest boards, swapped ideas over wine. My apartment filled with fabric swatches and magazines. I took notes, organized lists. I wanted her vision to come to life exactly as she imagined it, but things began to shift. It started subtly, during a family dinner meant to talk wedding budgets. Mom walked in with a sleek, unfamiliar planner. Before we'd even sat down, she said, "I booked the Clayton Hotel." They had one summer date left. I grabbed it. Rebecca blinked in surprise. "Mom, that's generous," but Lisa and I were still looking. "The Clayton fills up fast," Mom replied, already patting Rebecca's hand like it was a done deal. "I've always pictured your wedding there." She didn't even glance at me. From that point on, it was clear, I was no longer part of the decision-making. My suggestions were dismissed. Vendors I'd researched were replaced by her friends' contacts. The color palette Rebecca and I had picked? Too dull, according to Mom. When I voiced concern, Rebecca tried to calm me. "She's just excited, and it helps having her involved. Plus, she and Dad are contributing a lot." So I stepped back. Quietly. I still helped where I could, but the joy was fading. I began to feel like a guest in something I'd helped build. Then came Megan, our cousin, always hovering just outside the family circle, waiting for a way in. Suddenly, she was everywhere. Social media posts showed her attending cake tastings, holding up dress swatches, moments I thought I'd be sharing with my sister. "Rebecca seems close to Megan lately," I said to my boyfriend, Tyler, one night, scrolling through another photo of the two of them laughing together. "Maybe she's just more available," he said gently. "You've had a busy quarter." I wanted to believe that. I told myself it was temporary. That our bond was stronger than a few missed outings, but the invitations stopped coming. Phone calls were rushed. Texts got shorter. Decisions were already made before I even knew there was something to decide. Still, I kept contributing. I paid the deposit for Rebecca's dream photographer, the one Mom called overpriced. I ordered custom welcome baskets for the guests. I even booked a surprise honeymoon to Bali, first-class flights, a private villa, ocean views. I held on to the hope that, after the wedding, things would go back to how they used to be. Then came the moment that shattered that illusion. I was at work when my coworker Natalie, whose friend owns a bridal boutique, turned to me and said, "Sandra told me your sister found her dress yesterday, said it was a perfect fit." I stared at her. "What dress appointment?" Her face changed. "Oh, at Elegant Moments? Your mom, sister, and cousin were there. They had champagne and everything. I thought you were with them." I smiled weakly, said something about a last-minute meeting, and excused myself. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at my reflection and knew I wasn't just left out. I was being written out. Rebecca and I had dreamed about wedding dress shopping since we were kids. We'd drape bedsheets over our heads like veils and spin around the living room, promising we'd be at each other's side for every important moment. So when I found out I wasn't included in hers, not even told about it, it felt like the ground shifted beneath me. That evening, I called her. I kept my voice steady. "How was dress shopping?" I asked. There was a beat of silence. Then, she said, "It wasn't supposed to be serious. Mom had scheduled something last minute, and Megan was free. It just kind of happened." "You could have asked me," I said quietly. "I would have made time." "Lisa, don't make this a big deal. There's plenty of other wedding stuff you'll be part of." But those other things never came. The bridal shower was planned without me. I was only asked to send money to help cover the venue. Megan took charge of the bachelorette party and picked a city Rebecca once told me she didn't even like. When I made suggestions, thoughtful ones, based on everything I knew about my sister, I was told, "That's not what Rebecca wants anymore." Even then, I didn't pull back. I stayed involved, quietly, behind the scenes. I finalized their honeymoon, $8,600 for luxury accommodations, private tours, and first-class tickets to Bali. I imagined giving Rebecca the surprise at the rehearsal dinner, imagined her hugging me the way she used to, happy and grateful. In my head, that moment was going to bring us back together, but the space between us kept widening. She stopped coming to our usual Sunday brunches. Every week, a new excuse. When we did talk, the conversations felt hollow, polite, but distant. Like she was going through the motions. After 3 weeks of silence and short replies, I finally asked, "Is everything okay between us?" She looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, just busy. Wedding stuff. Mom's been great with the details." I nodded, pretending not to notice how far away she felt. Then, one afternoon in May, 2 months before the wedding, I overheard something I'll never forget. I had stepped into the kitchen to refill my glass during a family gathering. From the next room, I heard my mother's voice. "Lisa's always been difficult," she said, tone matter of fact. "Rebecca's finally starting to see that. She always has to be in control. She makes everything about her." Megan chimed in next, dripping with fake sympathy. "That must be exhausting. Especially now, when Rebecca should be the focus." "Exactly," Mom replied. "We had to cut her out of certain things. It's better for everyone, especially the bride." I stood frozen, staring at the overflowing water in my glass. My own mother was actively undermining my relationship with my sister, and Rebecca wasn't pushing back. She was letting it happen. That night, I collapsed into tears in front of Tyler, finally saying aloud what I'd been dreading for months. What if they don't even want me there? What if all this distance isn't an accident? He wrapped me in his arms. "You've done nothing but love and support her. But you don't know how Mom is," I whispered. "She can twist anything. She makes herself sound like the victim, even when she's the one pulling strings." "Then stop waiting," he said gently, but firmly. "You need to talk to Rebecca. Face to face. No more guessing." He was right. The next morning, I texted her. "We need to talk about the wedding and about us. Can we meet?" She didn't reply. Until late that evening. "Really busy. Come to Mom and Dad's Thursday at 7. We can talk then." Those 5 days dragged on. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd stay calm, speak honestly, avoid blame. I kept reminding myself that maybe, just maybe, Rebecca was caught in the middle, overwhelmed. Unsure how to handle Mom. I didn't know then that I wasn't walking into a conversation. I was walking into a decision that had already been made. That Thursday evening, the air outside our childhood home felt strangely still. The driveway, once filled with hopscotch chalk and bike tracks, now looked unfamiliar. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, straightened my blouse, and took a breath. Before I could ring the bell, Mom opened the door. "We're in the living room," she said flatly, then turned away without waiting for a response. The scene inside felt choreographed. Dad sat stiffly in his recliner, not meeting my eyes. Rebecca was perched on the edge of the couch, twisting her hands in her lap. Mom stood behind her, hand resting protectively on the sofa. And in the chair I always used during family talks sat Megan, calm and composed, like she belonged there. I stayed on my feet. "No one offered me a seat, Rebecca," I said, trying to make eye contact. "I thought we were meeting to talk. Just the two of us." "We're all here to talk," Mom said. "About the wedding." A quiet, heavy stillness settled over the room. "We've been discussing things," she continued, her tone calculated. "And we feel your involvement is no longer helpful." I turned to Rebecca, waiting, hoping, for her to speak. She didn't. "You've been trying to control everything," Mom continued, checking off her points one by one. "From vendors to ideas to spending. It's become disruptive." Disruptive. That word echoed in my head. "Rebecca?" I said softly, begging for a real response. She finally looked up. "It's just been tense. When you get involved, there's friction." "Friction from me?" I asked. Or from Mom? Rebecca didn't answer. So I tried again. What do you think? Not what you've been told. What do you actually feel? Before she could respond, Mom stepped in, literally, placing herself between us. What Rebecca thinks, she said firmly, is that she deserves peace on her wedding day. And your presence would make that impossible. I stood still as the words landed. There it was, the truth, said out loud. I wasn't welcome. My presence at the planning, you mean? I asked, though I already understood what she really meant. My mother's lips curled into a satisfied smile, not a warm one, but something practiced and rehearsed, like she'd been waiting for this moment. No, she said slowly, savoring every syllable. You're not welcome at the wedding. Not as maid of honor. Not as a bridesmaid. Not even as a guest. It's better for everyone this way. Silence flooded the room. The ticking of the antique clock on the mantel grew louder, slicing through the tension like a blade. No one spoke. My father shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Megan stared at the floor. And Rebecca, my sister, my closest person for most of my life, said absolutely nothing. That silence did more damage than any of my mother's words. I took a breath. I see, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. When was this decided? We've been moving in this direction for some time, Mom replied, watching me closely, as if waiting for me to explode and disappointed when I didn't. Rebecca asked Megan to step in weeks ago. Tonight just made it official. I turned to Megan. She met my gaze, expression cool, not even pretending to look uncomfortable. Congratulations, I said, tone neutral. It's not personal, she said, casually, like replacing someone in their sister's life wasn't a betrayal. Like I hadn't been pushed aside piece by piece until I was no longer part of any of it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Replacing me in my sister's wedding, and pretending it doesn't matter, isn't personal? She said nothing. Neither did Rebecca. I turned back to my sister, one last time. Rebecca, I said, quiet but clear. Is this really what you want? Mom spoke again before Rebecca could form an answer. She wants a wedding without drama. You've made everything more difficult, needing things your way, criticizing every choice. The venue wasn't right. The menu wasn't elegant enough. You questioned everything. That's not true, I said, my voice cracking for the first time. Even when I wasn't asked, I still supported her. I've paid for things I was never thanked for. I didn't argue. I just helped. Mom's face hardened. There it is again, the money. Always mentioning how much you've done, how much you've spent. That's exactly why you're not invited. You throw your help in our faces and expect control in return. I looked at my father, silently pleading with him to speak up. Just one word. One sentence. Something. But all I got was a fleeting glance before he looked away. Same old story, silence over conflict. Even when it mattered most. A strange calm settled over me. Not numbness, not detachment. Something else. Clarity. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a breakdown in communication. This was intentional. Months of manipulation culminating in a carefully delivered exclusion. Thanks for telling me, I said softly. Then I turned toward the door, legs heavy but steps steady. As I reached the hallway, I heard my name, whispered, faint. It was Rebecca. But she didn't get up. She didn't stop me. No one did. The drive home blurred into streaks of light. And dark. Street lamps and traffic signals smeared across the windshield as my vision blurred with tears. I pulled over twice just to breathe, just to keep myself steady enough to keep driving. My phone buzzed over and over, messages I didn't want to read, names I didn't want to see. When I finally reached my apartment, Tyler was waiting. He stood up the second I walked in, his face shifting from hopeful to alarmed the moment he saw me. What happened? He asked, immediately pulling me into a hug. I tried to answer, but the words came in fragments. I told him about the ambush. The words my mother said, Rebecca's silence, Megan's smugness, and my father's refusal to speak. It came out broken and rushed, but it didn't need to be polished. He understood. They can't do this, Tyler said, his arms still wrapped around me. You're her sister. You've been there through everything. It doesn't matter, I whispered. None of it ever mattered. My mom has been turning Rebecca against me for months. She twisted everything. Made me into someone I'm not. Tyler squeezed my hand. So what now? I turned toward the window. The city lights were distant, flickering against the dark sky. I felt empty, stripped down, but somewhere beneath the pain, I felt a shift. A small, quiet voice saying this was it. The worst had happened. And now, I could move forward. I don't know, I said. But I know I can't keep accepting this. I didn't deserve what they did to me. What I didn't realize that night was that this confrontation wasn't the conclusion. It was the start of something much deeper, the unraveling of illusions, yes, but also the beginning of a healing process I hadn't known I needed. Sleep never came. I lay in bed for hours, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I replayed the scene again and again. My mother's words. Her tone. Rebecca's stillness. I kept searching for something redeemable, something that might shift my interpretation, but no matter how I turned the memory over, the outcome remained the same. By 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea that went cold beside me and opened a notebook. I started listing everything I'd contributed to Rebecca's wedding: deposit for the photographer, $2,500. Custom welcome baskets, $800. A string quartet as a surprise for the ceremony, $1,200. The antique hairpin that matched Grandma's earrings. Calligraphy for the place cards, something she mentioned liking once, offhand. Then the biggest gift, the honeymoon. First-class flights to Bali, $4,200. Private oceanfront villa, $3,800. Special experiences, a cooking class, a sunset sail, a waterfall trek, $600. Altogether, over $15,000 spent on a wedding I wasn't even invited to. As the sun broke over the skyline, I opened my laptop. Logged into my bank account. My fingers didn't shake. I canceled the payment. I transferred the $8,600 for the honeymoon back into my account. I hadn't planned revenge, but I decided one thing with absolute certainty: I wouldn't keep giving to people who saw me as disposable. I began the morning by undoing what had once been a labor of love. First, I logged into the airline portal and canceled both first-class tickets to Bali. Then came the resort. Every booking, every amenity, every carefully selected detail was deleted one by one. I followed that with a short, polite email to the travel agent who had arranged the private experiences. I simply wrote that the trip was no longer necessary and thanked her for her time. There was no need to say more. Throughout the night, my phone had buzzed with calls and texts, vibrating against the counter, lighting up the screen like a warning. I'd ignored it. But now, as I finished untangling the last pieces of my involvement, I picked it up. 3 missed calls from Rebecca. 12 from Mom. 1 from Dad, which said more than anything else. The messages were endless. My mother's texts dominated the screen. Some sounded defensive: "You always twist things to make yourself the victim." Others were full of guilt-tripping: "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" Not one message acknowledged what had happened. Not one expressed regret. I made one final call that morning, to my credit card company. "I'd like to report some unauthorized charges," I said calmly. The representative asked for details. I gave just enough to flag the wedding expenses that had quietly shown up on my bill. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I'd never given my mother permission to use my card to order extra favors or to upgrade the linens she insisted were necessary. She had assumed access. I had simply let it slide. Until now. By 7 a.m., I had severed all financial connections to the wedding. Everything I had contributed was either reversed, disputed, or removed from my records. I drafted a quick email to my supervisor requesting a personal day, clicked send, and shut my phone off entirely. The silence that followed was jarring. Empty, cold, and somehow relieving. I stepped outside and wandered into the city's public gardens. The air was still, the paths quiet. As I walked, the weight of the night before bore down on me. The betrayal wasn't abstract, it settled beneath my ribs, a dull, sharp ache that deepened with every breath. 30 years of shared history with Rebecca, of laughter, of pain, of showing up, and she'd let it end in silence. I kept replaying it. Her eyes fixed on the floor. Her voice absent. Her presence hollow. And Megan. Of all people, Megan. Later that day, I met Olivia for lunch. I hadn't meant to tell her everything. I thought I might keep it vague, just say there had been family drama, nothing specific. But the moment she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. She waited until I was ready to speak, and when I finally did, the words came out all at once. I told her about the confrontation. The humiliation. My mother's cruelty. Rebecca's silence. Megan's smugness. My father's unwillingness to say a word. When I finished, Olivia stared at me, stunned. "Your mother actually said that? To your face?" I nodded, picking at a salad I had no intention of eating. "And Rebecca didn't defend me? Not once." "Are you serious? She just let her do that?" Olivia asked, voice rising. "A couple people glanced our way." "She tried to talk," I said quietly. "A few times. But Mom kept interrupting. And she didn't fight it. She just let it happen." Olivia reached across the table and took my hand. "Lisa, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I didn't before because I didn't want to hurt you. But I think you need to hear it now." My chest tightened. "What?" She hesitated for a moment. "Your mom's been talking about you. For a while now. To a lot of people." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "At Rebecca's engagement party, she told my mom you were jealous." That you couldn't be happy for your sister. And at the Williams dinner party last month, she told everyone she was worried about you, that your emotions were unstable, and that the family had to tread carefully around you. I blinked. She said that? Olivia nodded, guilt in her eyes. I shut it down every time I heard it. But it wasn't just one comment. It was little things. Constant. Always framed as concern. Just enough to make people doubt you. Her voice echoed in my head, my mother's accusations, you're controlling. You need attention. You always make it about you. This hadn't started last night. She had been eroding my credibility for months. Carefully. Quietly. To everyone, but why would she do that? I asked, more to myself than to Olivia. Olivia didn't hesitate. Because you're strong. Independent. You don't rely on her. You've built something she never did, your own life, your own success. That scares her. The pieces began sliding into place. The dismissive comments about my career. The sarcasm disguised as compliments. The way she minimized my accomplishments. While constantly elevating Rebecca. The family dinners I wasn't told about. The times she'd pit us against each other under the guise of just trying to help. I sat back, stunned. I've been so naive. You've been someone who loved her mother, Olivia corrected gently. That's not a flaw. It's just human. By the time I got home, I felt different. Still hurt. Still angry. But more clear-headed than I'd been in days. I turned my phone back on, notifications poured in. 28 missed calls. Dozens of messages. A stream of voicemails. Some full of rage, some guilt-ridden. A few borderline manipulative. My mother's messages shifted in tone with every attempt, from blame, how could you cancel something you promised? To threat, don't make me tell people the truth about you. And finally, to bargaining, we can fix this, but you need to apologize. My father had left a few messages as well, his voice low and cautious. One sounded like it was recorded from his car, windows down, road noise in the background. I didn't know what was happening, he said quietly. Please call me. Other relatives were beginning to take sides. Uncle Robert left a long-winded voicemail about honoring parents, quoting scripture. My grandmother, in her soft, trembling voice, asked if I was feeling all right, clearly under the impression that I'd had some kind of emotional breakdown, but not all the messages were what I expected. Aunt Catherine, someone who had always remained on the sidelines. Someone who rarely took sides or spoke out, left a voicemail that stopped me in my tracks. I've seen your mother do this before, Lisa, Aunt Catherine's message read. She did the same thing to me when she married your father. Call me, we need to talk. I started there. When she answered, her voice was instantly soothing. Oh, honey. I've been so worried. Are you okay? Not really, I admitted. I don't understand any of this. Why would Mom do something like this? Because she sees you as a threat, she said, without hesitation. You always have been, independent, competent, everything she struggles to control. Deborah needs to be the center of everyone's life. When that's challenged, she lashes out. By isolating me from Rebecca? By pushing me out of the wedding? She did the same to me, Catherine said quietly. Your father and I were close. But once Deborah came into the picture, she created tension where there was none. Told your dad I was saying terrible things about her. Before I knew it, I was no longer welcome at their wedding. I sat in stunned silence. He never mentioned any of that. Thomas avoids conflict, especially with your mother. Always has, she said with a sigh. Eventually we mended things, but our relationship was never the same. That's why I'm telling you now, so history doesn't repeat itself with you and Rebecca. After that call, I reached out to Andrea, my college roommate, who now worked as a therapist. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. She didn't break any professional boundaries, but she helped me see the patterns, narcissistic tendencies, control tactics, the dynamic between a golden child and a scapegoat. She gave me language for what I'd been feeling, and permission to set limits without guilt. She's trying to protect her worldview, Andrea explained. But you have to protect your peace. Your sister is caught in the web too, but don't set yourself on fire trying to free her. While I was still absorbing her advice, my phone rang again. James, Lisa, he said immediately, his voice strained. Thank God. I wasn't sure you'd answer. Things have gotten intense. What's going on? We found out what your mom's been doing. Everything. She's been lying to Rebecca about everything. I stayed silent, waiting. She made fake texts, full conversations. Told Rebecca you didn't want to be part of the wedding. That you thought it was beneath you. Even changed the contact names on Rebecca's phone so your real texts got redirected. My breath caught. She said I canceled the dress appointment. She showed Rebecca a message that never existed, James said. When we confronted her, she admitted to manipulating Rebecca's phone and email. It's worse than we thought. And the ambush? I asked. Deborah told her it was a healing conversation, that you needed to hear how much pain you'd caused. She never knew what was coming. Then why are you telling me this and not Rebecca? There was a pause. Because she's scared, he admitted. She thinks you won't speak to her again. And, because your mom showed up at our apartment last night. I froze. What? She was out of control. Screaming. Accusing us. Of betrayal. Demanding we cut you off. The neighbors called security. It got bad. I sat in stunned silence. I need time, James. I get that. Just, don't shut her out completely. Please. She's hurting. She didn't know. I didn't promise anything, but I didn't hang up on him either. I had barely put my phone down when it rang again, this time from Sandra, the receptionist at work. Lisa, I hate to disturb your day off, she said cautiously, but your mother is here. I sat up straighter. At the office? She arrived about 20 minutes ago. Demanded to speak with you. When I explained you weren't in, she's making a scene. What kind of scene? She's shouting, Lisa. Accusing you of stealing from her. Telling people you've had a breakdown. Mr. Daniels is with her now, but she's getting louder. I'm coming, I said, already grabbing my keys. That 15-minute drive felt endless. I'd worked hard to separate my professional world from my personal one. My mother had never visited my office. She'd barely acknowledged my career. But now, she was here, trying to destroy the life I'd built. When I walked into the lobby, I saw her, flanked by security, yelling wild accusations as they led her toward the exit. She's not stable, she cried. She's dangerous. You people don't know the truth. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. Mr. Daniels walked over, calm and composed. Take whatever time you need, Lisa, he said quietly. We know who you are. None of this will affect your standing here. His words were reassuring, but my skin burned with humiliation. I had never felt so exposed, not even during the family ambush. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. It was a direct attack on my stability, my reputation, my identity. Our eyes met across the lobby. My mother, being led out by security, held my gaze with a cold, burning satisfaction. There was no regret in her expression. Only control, a sense that, somehow, she had won, and in that moment, something broke. Not out of weakness, but clarity. I wasn't a little girl begging for love anymore. I wasn't desperate for her approval. I was done. This wasn't maternal concern. This was emotional sabotage. And it had gone on long enough. That night, I made a decision. No more emotional appeals. No more waiting for her to come around. I would face this directly, with facts, with truth, with boundaries. I would meet with Rebecca and present everything. Every manipulated message, every receipt, every proof of what I had done and what had been done to me. Whatever came next would come from a place of truth, not illusion. 2 days later, I sat in a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. I had arrived early, folder in hand, evidence carefully sorted and ready. When Rebecca walked in, I barely recognized her. Her confidence was gone. Her expression hollow, exhausted. She looked like someone who had been living in a house full of smoke and only just realized it was burning. Thank you for coming, she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. I thought James might come too, I said. He's parking, she replied. I asked for a few minutes alone with you first. Her fingers trembled as she set her phone on the table. Lisa, I don't know where to begin. So I waited. Let her speak. I believed her, she whispered, voice cracking. Every lie. She showed me texts. Told me you said horrible things. That you didn't care. That you thought my wedding was beneath you. She shook her head, tears pooling in her eyes. I didn't want to believe it, but it was easier than facing the truth about Mom. She showed you fake texts? I asked, already knowing. Rebecca nodded. Look. She unlocked her phone, scrolled to a conversation marked with my name. I leaned in. The words weren't mine, not even close. The text messages Rebecca showed me were a gut punch, a series of complaints about wedding expenses, cruel jabs at her choices, and outright dismissals of her plans. All supposedly sent from my number, but the tone? It wasn't me. Not even close, she explained, her voice trembling. Mom had access to my phone. She made a new contact using her number, but labeled it with your name. Every time I thought I was messaging you, it was her. And she'd reply, pretending to be you. Tears streaked down Rebecca's cheeks. She even deleted your actual messages. I barely saw anything you sent. I thought you didn't care. The scale of the manipulation hit me like a wave. But what about when we saw each other? Didn't anything feel strange? We hardly spent time together these past few months. She said. Mom always had a reason why you couldn't make it. And when we did meet, she was right there, monopolizing the conversation, then twisting your words afterward to make you sound critical. At that moment, James approached, placing coffee cups gently on the table before sitting beside her. "She contaminated everything," he said, his tone heavy with regret. "I'm sorry, Lisa," James added. "I should have sensed something was wrong." "What tipped you off?" I asked. "The honeymoon," he replied. When the cancellation notice came through, Rebecca was confused. She had no idea there was a trip to Bali. "Your mom told her you'd promised it as a gift, then revoked it out of spite after being excluded from the wedding." "That didn't make any sense," Rebecca jumped in. "Why would someone spend that kind of money just to be petty?" "So we started digging," James continued. "We reviewed phone logs, matched timestamps. When we began cross-referencing things, the whole false narrative unraveled. We even discovered a folder on your mom's tablet with screenshots of fake messages, conversations she'd forged to support her version of events." I reached into my bag and slid a folder across the table. I brought my own receipts, payment records, email threads, booking confirmations. They opened the folder. As they flipped through, their expressions darkened. Horror, disbelief, then fury crossed their faces as they compared the truth to the lies they'd been fed. "That evening at your parents' house," James said, "Rebecca thought it was a chance to sort things out. She didn't know your mom planned to cut you out entirely." Rebecca's voice broke. "When mom started attacking you, I froze. She said we'd all agreed. I couldn't speak. By the time I realized what was happening, you were already walking away." She reached for my hand. "Lisa, I never wanted you out of my wedding. You're my sister. My oldest friend. I can't do this without you." Hearing those words triggered a torrent of emotions. After months of being made to question my place in the family, the validation cracked something open in me. "We need to talk about mom," I said carefully. "What she's done, it isn't just overbearing. It's deeply manipulative. It's worse than that," James added quietly. "After you left, Rebecca confronted her. And she changed. Her face, her voice, like she became someone else." "She admitted it all," Rebecca whispered. "No guilt. She claimed she was protecting me from your influence. When I told her I wanted you back in the wedding," she continued, "she threatened to pull her financial support and spread rumors about me having a mental breakdown." "That's the same thing she's been doing to me," I said, realization hardening my tone. "Exactly," James said. "It's a pattern. She discredits anyone who challenges her." For the next hour, we laid it all out: the deleted texts, the invitations I never received, the gossip seeded throughout our community, the financial strings pulled with silent expectations. Layer after layer of deceit and control revealed itself like a puzzle coming together. "I've scheduled a family meeting," I told them. "Dad, Aunt Catherine, a few others, people who need to hear the truth." "When?" Rebecca asked. "Tomorrow night. Will you come?" Without hesitation, she nodded. "Absolutely. They deserve to know." The following evening, we gathered in Aunt Catherine's sitting room, a circle of family braced for revelation. Rebecca sat to my right, James beside her. Dad looked uneasy. Aunt Catherine and Uncle Paul were present, and even Grandma Martha had asked to join, troubled by recent conversations with my mother. I spoke without embellishment. I laid out the falsified texts, the credit card transactions, the testimonies of public outbursts. Aunt Catherine recounted her own experience of being pushed aside by mom decades ago. James described the scene in their apartment, mom screaming, accusing, spiraling out of control. Dad sat quietly, shoulders slumped. As I wrapped up, he finally spoke. "I knew, not all of it, but some. Enough that I should have acted. But I didn't. I kept quiet to keep peace. I'm sorry, Lisa. I let you down." We were interrupted by mom's arrival. She believed the gathering was about the wedding budget. Her confident stride faltered when she saw the group and the documents arrayed on the table. "What's this?" she demanded. "A moment for truth," I said. Predictably, she started with denial. Then came deflection, accusing us of turning against her, playing victim. When that failed, she grew angry. Screaming, sobbing, swearing it was all misunderstood, all done out of love. No one budged. Eventually, she pointed at me. "After everything I've done, this is how I'm treated." Rebecca stood, meeting her mother's gaze. "Lisa will be my maid of honor. If you can't be kind and respectful to her, your presence at the wedding, and in our lives, will be limited." The shock on mom's face was immediate. "You'd choose her over me?" "I'm choosing honesty over manipulation," Rebecca replied. "Well-being over dysfunction." Mom turned to Dad, expecting him to intervene. For once, he didn't. "Enough, Deborah," he said. "This ends now." The meeting didn't magically fix everything. Mom left in a fury, threatening consequences. But something permanent had shifted. Her control was broken. Her tactics exposed. The illusion she'd maintained for decades had finally collapsed under the weight of truth. In the days that followed, the family dynamic began reshaping itself. We weren't healed yet, far from it, but we were no longer in denial. For the first time in years, we were moving toward clarity, trust, and genuine connection. The week before Rebecca's wedding brought a new kind of peace. Unstable at times, sure, but real. And for once, we weren't living under the shadow of silence. Dad shocked everyone by standing firm when Rebecca reinstated me as her maid of honor. For decades, he'd stayed neutral, walking the tightrope between maintaining calm and avoiding the uncomfortable. But something in him had shifted after everything came to light. One evening, we sat on my balcony, city lights flickering below like distant stars. The sound of traffic faint in the background. I should have stood up for you both years ago, he confessed, coffee cup in hand, voice quieter than usual. I thought that staying quiet was the same as keeping peace. I realize now it wasn't peace, it was neglect. What changed? I asked gently. He stared into his mug as though searching for answers inside it. Seeing everything laid out. The emails, the texts, the lies. I couldn't ignore it anymore. And if I'm honest, Lisa, I'm tired of the tension, the performance, the pretending. Hearing him say those things aloud, words I'd longed to hear since childhood, was like an unexpected salve on an old wound. A new version of him was emerging, not the man who averted conflict, but someone who could admit fault and try to rebuild. Meanwhile, Rebecca and I were slowly stitching our bond back together. It was frayed and fragile, but still intact. Each day brought us closer to what we once were. We had long conversations, filled with apologies, shared memories, and raw emotion. We mourned the months lost to manipulation, but also took cautious joy in our second chance. I keep thinking about what would have happened if James hadn't found those fake messages, she told me one morning over brunch, our tradition lovingly resurrected. Let's not go there, I replied, squeezing her fingers. We're back. That's what matters. As for our mother, the family delivered firm boundaries. She could attend the wedding, but her role would be restricted. No backdoor influence, no private vendor meetings, no attempts to alienate anyone. Rebecca had drawn that line with crystal clarity. And if I don't agree to this? Mom had asked, her tone laced with disdain. Then you'll attend as a guest, with no say over the ceremony or reception, Rebecca responded firmly. For once, there was no trembling in her voice. To everyone's surprise, Mom accepted the terms, but her compliance felt superficial. A flicker of resentment lingered in her expression, quickly masked with rehearsed grace. Personally, the experience had forced me into uncomfortable but necessary introspection. I'd started therapy with a counselor specializing in family trauma. Over the weeks, I began unraveling the internalized patterns, my compulsion to keep the peace, to fix problems, to give more than I received. Your value isn't in what you give, my therapist, Dr. Marshall, reminded me during one pivotal session. Not financially, not emotionally. You exist beyond your usefulness. Those words stayed with me as the wedding neared. I stepped back into my maid of honor role, but on my terms. I supported Rebecca, organized the bridesmaids, helped with final touches, but I no longer emptied my energy to compensate for others' shortcomings. I even arranged a new, more modest honeymoon package. Still generous, but a healthy gift, not an offering made out of guilt or expectation. This is something I want you both to enjoy, I told Rebecca and James. But it's a gift, not currency for love or inclusion. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, a poetic contrast to the storms that had preceded it. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. at the elegant Clayton Hotel, giving us hours to prepare. True to her word, Mom maintained the behavior we'd outlined. She kept her distance from me, spoke only when necessary, and clung to her public persona as the gracious mother of the bride. But I could see the strain in her posture, the tightness behind her smiles. Helping Rebecca into her gown, the one I hadn't seen her choose, brought a complicated mix of emotions. I felt proud, nostalgic, grateful, and, yes, a trace of sadness for the joyful moments we'd missed. Catching my expression in the mirror, Rebecca said softly, I wish we could erase the last few months. I paused, then shook my head. I don't, I said honestly. As painful as it's been, it cleared the fog. We understand each other now, honestly, not just hopefully. She turned toward me, glowing in lace and satin. When did my big sister get so wise? I smiled, adjusting her veil. Probably when my little sister found her courage. The ceremony was breathtaking. I stood beside Rebecca as she said her vows to James, pride and emotion swelling in my chest. From the front row, Dad watched with quiet affection, while Mom sat poised, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Occasionally, her eyes flicked to mine, unreadable. But it was during the reception that the most surprising moment came. I was alone near the gift table, straightening a few cards, when I heard her voice, the calligraphy's beautiful. That was you, wasn't it? I turned, heart braced for another cutting remark. But her expression surprised me. There was something softer there, something that looked like humility. Yes, I said simply. Rebecca mentioned she loved hand-lettered details. She nodded, silence stretching awkwardly between us. Then, in a quieter tone, you've always been good at seeing what people love. I never had that. Not really. I didn't reply, unsure. Where this was going, she continued, her eyes fixed somewhere beyond me. The therapist Catherine recommended said I need to learn to acknowledge others' strengths without feeling threatened. Apparently, that's hard for me. You're seeing someone? I asked, trying to mask my surprise. Your father insisted. After everything, he said it was necessary. She looked at me then. I don't expect this fixes anything. I know trust takes time. But I'm trying. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't transformation. But it was something. A fracture. In her armor. And for that day, it was enough. A month later, our family began attending group therapy. Mom came reluctantly at first, then slowly began participating more openly. The structure gave her a place to express herself without resorting to control or manipulation. Dad, too, began finding his voice, sharing thoughts and feelings he'd suppressed for decades. Rebecca and I were rebuilding something stronger than before, not a fragile dependency, but a balanced relationship based on respect, accountability, and care. And I changed, too. I stopped pouring from an empty cup. I started saying no when it protected my peace. I realized that help should be offered, not extracted. That support should flow both ways. Tyler, my constant, was there through it all. His steady love never wavered, even when I felt unworthy of it. 6 months after the wedding, we hiked to our favorite overlook, the sky painted in pastels. That's where he proposed. Yes, I said, without hesitation. Then added, but one condition. He grinned. Name it. We plan this wedding our way. Just us. Minimal committee, clear boundaries, no drama. He laughed, the sound echoing. Into the hills. Deal. In the years that followed, our family's progress was uneven, but real. Some days, Mom made genuine efforts to connect, other times, she backslid. But the difference was, now we saw it clearly. We no longer mistook manipulation for love. Dad discovered passions he'd long abandoned. He began painting again, even enrolled in community classes. Rebecca and James had a baby, a little girl named Ella Lisa. The moment they told me, I cried. And me? I finally learned the most important lesson of all. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Boundaries don't mean you love less, they mean you love smarter. And valuing yourself isn't pride. It's survival. The night Mom told me I wasn't welcome at the wedding feels like a distant echo now. But that night changed me. It forced me to stand tall in truth, even when it meant standing alone. If you're facing something similar, family manipulation, painful exclusion, emotional gaslighting, know this, you are not alone. You deserve love that lifts, not love that binds. Your worth isn't defined by who accepts you. Sometimes, walking away is the first step toward coming home to yourself, and if this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experience. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you protect your peace? Let's share, support, and heal, together. Thank you for listening. Your story matters, too.